Hello. I wanted to start off this section 4.1 by just recapping some of the basic ideas behind transformations and tying them in to our vertex form. All right, some important features about that first letter there, that coefficient, if you will, of our quadratic, the variable a. All right. Now, a has some very interesting things that it does. But to start off with, a can create a reflection. All right. That's a reflection over the x-axis. All right. Now, if a is greater than 1, the absolute value of it is greater than 1, then it will create a stretch situation. It will stretch the parabola. If the absolute value of a is between 0 and 1, that means we're going to have a compression. Remember what I'm talking about between 0 and 1, we're talking about 1/2, 3/4, 0.45, any number decimal fraction that is between 0 and 1 would result in a compression when you take the absolute value of a for that. The next piece there is our h, and h in terms of transformations is talking about a horizontal translation, so it moves left or right. It's going to move that parent function y equals x squared left or right. Last but not least there, our dear friend k. K is on the end. It will create a vertical translation, so it will move the parent function up or down. Now that means the whole parabola itself, every single one of its points will move up or down. So we need to make sure we keep that in mind as we go on to graph all of these things. All right, those are some of the key features of the vertex form, just in a general transformational sense. Now, more specifically, we can identify the vertex right away. The vertex in the vertex form is always just going to be hk. Now, this is something that a lot of people get mixed up, but we have to remember when we take the h out of that parenthesis, that grouping, it's going to have to change. So if it were a positive h in there, the h that goes into the vertex would actually be a negative h. All right, so we have to change the sign on that. And then from there we have our axis of symmetry. And the axis of symmetry is always just x equals whatever the value is for h. Now the direction, we have two directions, and it all is determined by a. So our parabola is either going to open up or it's going to open down. Now if it opens up, that's because a is positive or greater than 0. If it opens down, that's because a is negative or it's less than 0. Now the minimum and the maximum are easy to get mixed up, so we have to be very careful with this. The minimum is the result of a being greater than 0. And then we have to keep in mind that that's because our parabola actually opens upward. So we're going to have a minimum point, a point at the very bottom there, where the parabola doesn't go any lower than that. So it's a minimum point. And we call that minimum point y equals k. It's the value of the y coordinate there, the value of k. So that's the minimum. If we are talking about the maximum, we're talking about the highest point of our parabola, which means a is actually going to be less than 0. If we recall from just up above there, if a is less than 0, that means the parabola is opening down. Parabola opening down means we have a high point, a vertex, at the highest point of the parabola. So that means we're going to have a maximum, and that's just going to be also y equals k. So the maximum and minimum is always going to be the value of our k from our vertex, and the real discerning point is is it a minimum value or a maximum value? Another piece we need to talk about is our domain. And whenever we're talking about domain, we're talking about the x value. All right, so what could the possible x values be in our parabola? And those x values are always going to be the set of all real numbers for the parabolas we're working with. Parabolas in general, they're always going to be the set of all real numbers. That's what the domain will be. The range, on the other hand, is going to be slightly different. The range deals with our y values. All right. So again, because it's dealing with our y values, we have to consider what's happening with a. Do we have a minimum or a maximum? If a is greater than 0, right, opening up, we're going to have a minimum value, but that means then that our range, y, is going to be greater than or equal to k, because all the numbers are going to be bigger. They're all going to be bigger than that k value from. All the y's are going to be bigger than the k value of the vertex. Conversely, if we have y less than 0, it's opening downward. We have a maximum value, but y is actually going to be less than or equal to all k's. So we need to make sure we keep that in mind as we are working with and identifying our different quadratic functions or quadratic equations.